Dr. Edward Howell is a senior lecturer at Harvard Medical School, and he writes that the two most powerful experiences in a person's life are achieving and connecting. He says most of what grabs our attention, commands our energy, compels our help, falls into these two categories. He writes, connecting has to do with our relational world, falling in love, forming a deep friendship, hearing words of affection or affirmation from a parent or a child. That's connecting. Achieving has to do with the world of our accomplishments, winning a contest, pursuing a successful career, realizing a difficult goal. He goes on to point out that our society is increasingly devoted, obsessed with, and enslaved by achieving. And that compared to other societies in other times in history, he writes, we are increasingly bankrupt and impoverished when it comes to connecting relationally. He said it's apparent with the dissolution of families, increased mobility and transients in our world, people sense that they're just not known. Well, achieving is a good thing. It's not a bad thing when it's done the right way for the right reasons. And when that's true, it's a great thing. But it's absolutely no substitute for relationship. I've never known anybody who failed continually at relationships, who lived isolated, lonely, and unconnected, who had no deep friendships, but had a meaningful, joy-filled life. Not a single one. So the 20th century was littered with people who achieved greatly with enormous wealth, power, fame, but they didn't have any relational intimacy. They didn't have time to connect with other human beings. They might have had a Rolodex full of acquaintances, but not a single friend, and every one of them died with bitter regrets and lonely. No matter how much they achieved, that was always the end. But on the other hand, I've never known anybody who succeeded greatly at relationships, who cultivated great friends, who were devoted to their family, who mastered the art of giving and receiving love, that had a bad life. Nobody. No matter how little money they had, no matter how low they were on somebody's success ladder, you know, they never live with regret on a deathbed about being devoted to their friends, their family, their children. Not one. So being in meaningful relationships is life-giving to a human being. We've learned very, very well, and we've heard so many great messages about God's miracle-working power, about God's healing power, about God's providing power, and about God's miraculous delivering power. But sometimes we just take it for granted as believers that God's going to heal every sickness, that God's going to meet every financial need, that God's going to open every prison door, and put back every broken marriage. But I'm going to prove to you in a little bit right through the Bible an uncomfortable truth. Most often God does, but sometimes God doesn't heal. Sometimes God does not come through with a miracle. Sometimes God does not repair a broken home. Sometimes God does not provide a financial relief. And my question this morning, which is not so popular, but ought to be considered, what will you do if the answer from God is no? What will you do if the answer is no? What will you do if God does not choose, in your case, to deliver? What will you do if God does not heal? We've watched God heal tumors. We've watched people under an MRI come, pray for them, anoint them with oil. They go into surgery and the doctor can't find the tumor. We've seen some incredible turnarounds in people's health in dramatic and miraculous ways. But we've seen people die. So remember, keep balance and perspective with biblical truth. So I thought it would serve us well to take stock of all of our experiences in God, which are good, and say this: I know God can and usually does heal. I know God can put my home back together. I know God can provide my financial need. I know God can deliver me out of this mess. But if not, I'll still love him, I'll still trust him to know what's best, and I'll still serve him. So I know God can, but if he doesn't, won't matter. I'm going to serve him. He's God, I'm not. So our text comes from the book of Daniel this morning, and you've heard me preach it many times about the fourth man in the fire and the fact that he's still in the furnace, just waiting for you when you go through your trial. I've preached about the courage of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who gained the favor of God through their refusal to bow down to a golden idol, even at the threat of death. And we've talked about the furnace that was designed to destroy actually becomes deliverance to these three Hebrew children. But at rereading that passage, 3 words jumped out at me that I never hear preached. It's a simple statement, just 3 words by these Hebrew boys, but it speaks volumes about the character of these 3 young men. They said, "We know, O king, that our God is able to deliver us out of your furnace. We know that our God can send angels from heaven to bear us up and out of this crowd. We know that our God could kill each and every one of our persecutors if he so chose. We also know, O king, that the same God that opened the Red Sea and allowed our forefathers to walk across on dry ground can keep us from a measly fiery furnace. We know that our God is able, well able to deliver us, O king. Oh, but by the way, if he chooses not to, but if not, that's my message, we'll still trust him and we still won't bow." And that statement was made before they knew what the outcome would be. It's easy after the outcome to say something, but they're making a declaration before they know what the consequences are going to be. For all they knew, they were speaking their final words. For all they knew, they were writing their own death sentences. For all they knew, they'd just wake up in glory. But it's as if these 3 men were saying, "Okay, king, in case we die in this furnace and we don't get a chance to tell you again, can we just make it crystal clear to you, we will never bow down to your graven image. We will never shrink back in fear because of your threat. We will never serve your gods. We will never forsake our experience. We will never turn our back on our God. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes, O king, but let us say right now, we know our God is able. But if not, you'll have to suck it up. We are not going to bow down. We'd rather burn than bow. I don't know what tomorrow holds, O king. I don't know if God's going to heal me or not. I don't know if God's going to deliver me or not. I don't know if God's going to meet my financial need or not. I don't know if God's going to deliver me as a hostage or not. But just in case I don't get another chance to tell you, devil, let me say it one more time. I know God is able, but I'll still worship him. I know God can, but if he chooses not, I'll still serve him. If I die in the furnace, it's okay. I'll just wake up shouting on the hills of glory. So one more time, I'll trust him no matter what tomorrow holds. Now let me give you some proof. I pray we have the same dedication of, I wonder why God has allowed this. Why doesn't God stop it? What have I done? See what you're doing? He knew God is not out to do me evil, ever. You forget we have an adversary. Are you so dignified in America you don't believe in demons and you don't believe in Satan? They're exposed all over the Bible. Jesus dealt with them. Explain what's going on. So in the midst of all this trial, here's what never changed about Job. Job 1, verse 22. In all of this, Job sinned not, nor did he charge God foolishly with his mouth. I wonder why God has allowed this. Why doesn't God stop it? What have I done? See what you're doing? He knew God is not out to do me evil, ever. You forget we have an adversary. Are you so dignified in America you don't believe in demons and you don't believe in Satan? They're exposed all over the Bible. Jesus dealt with them every day. And all of a sudden we think it's just, I'm only dealing with human flesh. I'm sorry, we're at war. Good and evil, light and darkness, Satan and God. You weren't born into a playground. You were birthed into a battleground when you were born again. There's a war going on. You got to be tough. Stay vigilant. Stay on your game. And if this wasn't admirable enough, what really amazes me about Job's experience with God is he's scraping his boils one day, His soul is deeply troubled. He's got no comfort or encouragement from his friends. He's trying to figure out what's happened. Why has it happened? How long is it going to last? And his friends are miserable comforters. And the general topic of the conversation was, Job, doesn't it anger you God's not speaking right now to you? Doesn't it get your goat that God won't at least explain himself in his actions? Don't you ever get upset and question God, Job? And Job, looked back and he said, gentlemen, I'm not going to lie to you. I'd love to speak to God. I'd love to be able to have counsel with the Almighty. I don't know what could be worse than the situation I'm in unless God personally steps out of heaven, rides down here on a white horse, has a flaming sword in his hand, looks me in the eye and drives that sword right through my heart. And boys, just in case that's about to happen, and just in case I don't wake up this next morning and see the sun coming over the eastern horizon, let me say right now for the record, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Say, put that on your refrigerator when you're going through a storm. He said, I don't understand a thing going on. And Job hadn't done anything wrong. And somehow in our theology, I think we're getting just a little too sugar-coated sweet to think bad things can't happen to good people, obedient people, and occasionally they just do. I know God can turn any situation around today if he desires, but if he does not, I still trust him. Here's another good illustration. John the Baptist, the forerunner of Messiah, and a relative. And bear in mind, in his resume, Jesus said, of those born of woman, there's not a greater than John the Baptist. How'd you like to have that on your resume? And he's in prison. He's the victim of a jealous woman with a Jezebel spirit, and sitting in a prison cell now, waiting to have his head removed and presented to Herod's wife on a silver charger. This forerunner of Messiah had some questions too. I'm sure he pondered his fate and he thought, you know what? I've done everything I could for the Messiah. I've been a voice crying in the wilderness, preparing the way. I've submitted to him and confessed he's greater than I am, that I am not the Messiah, but it is he who is to come. I've done everything right. Now surely my relative and Messiah will come and break open these prison doors and deliver me out of this jail cell and this ISIS execution. And as he waits patiently, there's no telegram, no email. Nobody is dispatched from Jesus' entourage to say, don't worry, he's coming. He didn't get wired any flowers. Nobody notified him they're having prayer meetings for you around Jerusalem. Don't worry, John. Nothing. Zip. Zero.